P20 Pro has more camera lenses than the Galaxy S9 Plus, so you are getting a 12 megapixel f1.8 RGB sensor, a 40 megapixel f1.6 monochrome sensor and an 8 megapixel telephoto sensor. But does it make the smartphone really better? Daylight shots and outdoor shots. So I've taken a bunch of pictures on both smartphones during the last weeks, and to be honest, under daylight conditions, both smartphones are performing very similar. Now for sure you will have some lighting situations where each smartphone applies different processing, resulting in different looking pictures. Even though DxOMark claims that the P20 Pro has the highest dynamic range they have ever measured, and some shots in comparison to the S9 Plus, it falls short. Also, Huawei's AI algorithm applies a bit too aggressive post-editing for my taste in some of the scenes, so sometimes I do really prefer the warmer and more natural hue on the S9 Plus, but this really depends on the scene. So Huawei is promoting the P20 series with butterflies. That's why I went to the butterfly house in Vienna to take a look at some indoor shots on both smartphones and also have a look at the zoom, which really impressed me. The detail in zoom images is the best in class for smartphones, especially for medium and long range shots, and the noise levels are always low in all lighting situations, making the P20 Pro the best telephoto smartphone camera ever. So it's not like I would use the zoom very often, but it's really nice to have it when you need it, and the results are really amazing compared to the S9 Plus. Now when it comes to low light performance, one of the most impressive features is Huawei's night mode. The camera takes multiple photos at different exposures, starting at underexposed through properly exposed and then overexposed. This technique is called exposure bracketing, and Huawei software can pull detail in the shadows from the overexposed shots and detail in the highlights from the underexposed images. And this process takes around 4 to 5 seconds and the image resolution is limited to 10 megapixel. The exposures are then stacked together to create an HDR-like image with aggressive noise reduction and massive sharpening by applying local contrast and structure adjustments. These mostly affect the midtones and create an illusion of a sharper image. So it's not really rocket science, but the results are mind-blowing for most of the people. Now this technique makes light sources appear really sharp, and if you take a picture of a sign with backlight in complete darkness, then usually you can't read it on the S9 Plus. But on the P20 Pro with its night mode, you can read everything in the highlights and still have great details in the shadows. So for sure Huawei's aggressive noise reduction also costs you some detail, but the overall image looks really stunning at the first look, and I think that's what people want. Unfortunately, 4K video does not really look good on the P20 Pro, so there is no stabilization in 4K or 1080p 60, and the footage looks in general a bit soft. 4K and 4K 60 on the S9 Plus is really impressive, and even 1080p or slow motion looks sharper than on the P20 Pro. But what's really good on the P20 Pro is the stabilization in 1080p 30. I've mounted it with a GorillaPod on my bike and it was shaking very hard, but the footage still looked really stable. I couldn't believe the results because the phone was shaking so hard, but I really have to say 1080p 30fps AIS stabilization is fantastic. It's too bad that it's not supported in 60fps and 4K, but I really hope that Huawei can improve the video quality with future updates. Now battery life is one of the big differences between these two phones. As while the Galaxy S9 Plus has a fairly large 3500 mAh battery, the P20 Pro has an even bigger 4000 mAh battery. I've used both smartphones every day for over 2 weeks, and I've noticed that both perform very similar when they run video playback or other continuous tasks. But during standby I noticed that my Exynos S9 Plus drains way faster than the P20 Pro, resulting in worse battery life. I'm also not the only one facing battery issues on the S9 Plus, but unfortunately Samsung tries to fool people and claim it's because of different usage. But the funny thing is that the actual drain happens during standby when apps are running in the background. So for me that sounds like an issue with the app scheduler and the background application management. Now, I did run the S9 Plus with medium battery saver mode with reduced brightness, processor speed, full HD Plus only, using Greenify to hibernate apps, and as well switched off location services and Bluetooth. Now, for most of the time I was not able to get more than 4.5 hours of screen on time with my normal usage. And for me this result is a little bit poor when I consider that all battery saver options are active. On the P20 Pro I could get easily around 6 to 7 hours of screen on time with not caring too much about power saving. I know that the Galaxy S9 Plus display is a lot bright at maximum brightness, but to be honest, I've never used it at maximum brightness during my tests, and it really hurts having a flagship device when you have to run it with lower resolution just to save battery.